Did it work? Hello, everyone. Let us know if that "we're going live soon" thing worked for you. Tried something new. Yeah, welcome. Tonight is our first installment ever in our Dissecting a Book We Loved maybe series. If everyone hates it, then it might be a standalone. Our standalone with series potential chat about a book we liked and why we think it worked. So, yay, Andrew said finally, something for the awkward silence.
I have decided to just embrace making it as uncomfortable as possible. We're all in this together. We can all just feel that cringe.
So yeah, today we are talking about The September House by Carissa Orlando. You don't have to have read it to participate in the chat, but we will be spoiling it probably quite thoroughly. So if you're worried about spoilers, beware. We don't have a huge format set up for this. I think we're just going to kind of freewheel it. There's 3 of us. We'll see how much there is to really break down. But if anyone has anything they'd also like to discuss about this book, let us know. I do want to start because I know all 3 of us reread this book. Would you give it 5 stars again after the reread?
Yes, but it was a different reading experience. Like for me, because there was that dark humor the first time I read it, where I was like, yeah, lady, you stay in that house. Like, you know? And then having read it all the way through the end and knowing about abuse and such, it made me very sad throughout the entire book. So I was missing some of that humor that I got from the first read through where I didn't know exactly what was going on. So I found that to be interesting from the reread.
Yeah. I listened to it the first time, and then this time I read the ebook of it, and I had forgotten a lot of what happened in that book. I was pretty sure I remembered roughly like, oh, he's down there is referring to 2 people.
Yeah.
But I had forgotten all about like the themes of cycles of abuse and stuff. So I felt like I got that experience all over again of like, oh, she's so funny. Haha, stay in the house. oh, wait. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, that's right. I tried.
Yeah.
Taking notes.
I tried that as well. It ended very quickly. But
I gotta see if I can find them again.
Did you feel like it was a different reading experience, listening versus reading? Because I read both times.
I think for me it was very different. I think just different things stand out to me when I'm listening to it versus when I'm reading it. So when I read it, I noticed a lot more of the themes and everything, whereas when I was listening to it, I noticed a lot more of like the wordplay and yeah, just like the turns of phrase that kept reoccurring and stuff. And I think once I hit the end when I was listening to it, it was very like, let's get to the end. We did it, folks. And so I got to really like sit in the ending a bit more.
Des is in the comments saying the parallels to abuse are so well done. Yes. Des really wanted to be here. They have like recommended this book to everybody in their lives.
Yeah.
This is definitely one of those for me as well. Of like, as soon as I read it, I'm like, yep, I know people who need to read this. Like it was just such a different experience from like other books. I'm just like going back to my initial why I loved it. Of like, it was so unexpected, and like it had everything I wanted in horror with the like themes and like talking about family dynamics and stuff, but like it was still a bit of a like almost cozy reading experience because of the voice so of the main character. Yeah. But like that was my big takeaway of like, because Margaret doesn't feel what you would typically feel here, I felt okay to just like be in it and accept her narrative on it. So
right. Yeah. It's interesting, Des, that you said you've listened to it 4 times, because this was my first time, I think, ever rereading a horror book. Like, I've read short stories multiple times before, but I've never reread a horror book. Versus, like, a lot of my rereads are usually because I'm like, oh yeah, it's like a comfort read, or stuff like that. This I wouldn't typify as comfort read. But so it was interesting. I felt like I was dissecting it more second time through.
One thing that you don't get in the audiobook is the acknowledgments, and there's like some materials in the back of the book. And I did not realize that this is like her first novel.
Yeah.
Like, we talk all the time about, oh, people who get published that quickly, it's so much more luck. But I heard that and I was like, you know what? Good for you, Carissa. You earned this one.
Yeah,
this one deserved to hit it big first try. Because she mentions in it, like, oh, my beta readers were my husband and my mom and stuff. And I was like, man, to hit it out of the park on your first go. She did get a degree in creative writing. So like nothing, but.
And she may have written a bunch of books beforehand, but just didn't pursue.
That's true.
Or maybe did pursue and didn't get anywhere. But yeah, definitely a good debut.
Yeah. I think the perspective that she chose was very much the standout, the hook for the whole thing, like taking a very common cool house trope and turning it on its head. That said, she really did her big one with this book. Yeah. Missy Kate, hello. Said hi all. Haven't read this yet, so not sure I'll stay to get spoiled. It's super fantastic. Highly recommend.
Yeah.
If there's still a chance you might read it, for sure. Like,
yeah,
but
we'd love you to stay, but also go.
Yeah, but I'd also be curious why you haven't yet. Of like, is it not something you normally read, or but also you can go.
I get it. We have long lists. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I didn't remember it starting with a prologue. And just to think of it from like a querying standpoint, whether they're like to prologue or not to prologue. And I had read some reviews before I had reread the book. So I was just like, oh, I remember liking it, but I wonder, what other people liked about it. And someone had said that they liked that it starts with the like creepy stuff has already been happening for a while versus like you going into a situation and noticing the creepy stuff starting to happen. So then when he had the prologue, I was like, oh, okay, but we did like establish she really likes this house and she wants this house. So I thought that was an interesting way that the author approached that. Like, yeah, we still need a little bit to ground you in it before we go in.
I almost, talking about perspectives that kind of throw you off a little bit, it starts like a romance between her and the house.
Yeah.
Like, her husband is there, but it's very much, I think she even has a slip of words in the minute where she's like, yeah, on the second page, she says, my feet had barely even touched a pebble in the driveway before I knew that this place was our home. Like, she slipped, like, this is about me in the house.
Yeah. I think she has that throughout a few times where she's like, my house.
Yeah. Oh, I mean ours. Yeah, I left a note. One of the first notes I left, because it took me a minute to realize I could leave notes, at the part where the priest comes. And I thought it was interesting, like, she consistently made choices that were like really evocative visually. So like the chapter doesn't start with the priest at her door or at her house. The priest gets dropped off at the end of the street and she watches him come all the way down, which also gives the opportunity for her to like slip back and forward in time a lot.
Yeah, she does.
Which she does it really often, which helps it not feel like, oh, I'm getting a million flashbacks, which you are. Like, you're getting a million flashbacks in this book. But she did it so well. And I think a huge part of it was making choices that not only feel like a horror film, like, of course, the priest gets dropped off at the end of the street and you're watching him amble down. Like, I can picture that so easily, even though I'm not the most visual writer. But that she has time to think about, like, oh, the first time we brought him over, what we did that first time to convince him to come. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the author did a really good job of deciding when you would get information from those flashbacks, because like we would get mentions of like, oh, there's something maybe family-wise, mental illness with her family, but we don't get any information about that till like the very end-ish of the book. But we definitely get those like little hints where they're like, oh yeah, isn't there that thing?
I think it's in Beat Sheets where they say like you get a context shifting midpoint. And it's almost exactly at the 50% mark when Edie makes a joke. And then she thinks for the first time, like, that shouldn't be funny considering my family's history. And she just drops it right at the 50% point. Yeah. And just throws everything into like, could this be pretend like not happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so bad at like remembering what I was thinking and theorizing the first time I read it, of like what I picked up on and what I didn't. Because like I feel like the abuse and stuff was always pretty clear. But also like, and also I assume I just always knew Hal was dead. Like that seemed fairly straightforward. But
yeah.
I think something that threw me off is the first like full flashback we get when she meets Hal and they see The Exorcist together and talk about like, the dad. Like, I haven't actually seen The Exorcist because
I haven't either.
Because my mom was very afraid of demons growing up. But they were talking about how like, oh, it's so sad that the dad had to like sacrifice everything to.
I think the priest.
The priest. That's what.
Yeah, it was the priest. Yeah, who may have been called father.
Yeah. That's probably who it was. And so then in my mind, the first read through, it was like, well, could Hal have done something like that for his wife? Because I don't think I picked up immediately. Like, I knew something must have happened, but I don't think I picked up immediately that it was an abusive situation because she was so good at like throwing me off the scent. I was like, well, she says she's really happy, so.
Right.
Yeah, like I think on that I didn't trust her judgment initially because like I could see the scenario in which she was like, she's fine with this being her life. Like yes, I found that interesting and like less scary, but at the same time of like, if this is your okay, I immediately felt like that was saying something.
Yeah, like when she's describing, the rules for the house or whatever like that, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, you adapt to the situation you're in, you figure out what to do. But then when she gets to like the rules for their husband of like having to tell exactly where she is and not being able to talk to other men, and I'm just like, girl, no. Obviously, hell no. It should have been my response, but yeah.
I think multiple times she
Misty
says,
Kate's just kind of like, I better go or not. I'll just turn you down.
Yeah, Carissa used repetition a lot, I think, to convey these things. So, like, multiple times she said, I was perfectly willing to make a heaven of any hell in which I happened to find myself.
Yeah.
And the first time she says it is like page 60 or 70, I think. And it gets repeated often.
Yeah. Or like, no one deserves to live like this. You don't deserve to live like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a repeated one too.
And that one getting used in the finale when she says like, this person said it to me, this person said it to me, this person said it to me. And then she turns out and she's like, I don't deserve to be living like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was really impressed with how layered like the house is the father, but the house is also kind of how the daughter is treating her, and then the things she's doing to the house are the things she did to her daughter that kind of messed her daughter up. And yeah, Des said the rules thing is so well done because it's such a common response to abuse. Yeah.
Yeah, and even she was talking about where sometimes there's like no predicting it, like you can't create a rule for it because you don't know when it's going to happen.
Mhm.
I forget what her examples were with that, but I was just like, gosh, like how horrible to live your life that way on, eggshells, as they say. But yeah, I think it was really interesting that we have her in this abusive relationship and then they move into this house which then abuses them in some respects.
Mhm.
Um, but then that like almost is what allows her to come out of the abuse is by like banding together with other victims of abuse. So I thought that was an interesting portrayal.
Mhm. Um, I also noticed with all the layering in, she would put in a flashback that would then relate to multiple different moments. So,
Mm.
like, very early on, we get a brief flashback about how she likes to just give in to whatever Catherine wants, like the time she got Catherine a boa constrictor.
Hmm.
And then Catherine is in the house trying to avoid talking about this breakup. And Catherine is like, "Oh, do you remember the time the boa constrictor got loose? A 5 foot tall boa constrictor, and he was just lost somewhere in the house. And do you remember like what I said to you?" And his name was Bilbo Baggins.
Hmm.
And so she said that he'd gone on an unexpected journey. So it's like you tied in an earlier flashback, you have a joke that makes the current moment more engaging, and it's for sure foreshadowing Hal's fate. Like,
Hmm.
such impressive layers.
Hmm. Out of
Um,
like the different pranksters and like apparitions that we saw, did you have any favorites or ones that you found particularly unsettling or anything like that?
I like the fireplace lady. She just comes out, like crawls down the ceiling while screaming.
yeah, I always like the visual of her husband of like just mangled in the closet trying to like light the house
Mm-hmm.
on fire, and like
Yeah.
once you kind of know how he got there, and like not a good person, but also like yeah, like what led to that is just yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was so much familiarity in the types of ghosts in the house.
Mm,
Like so much world building through just her casually talking about, oh, and that's the little boy whose intestines are they just fall out right on
yeah.
schedule, you know?
Even just how casually she talked about like what happened and what she felt when she touched one of them, of
Yeah.
like she felt it, but it just wasn't that like focused on because it happened to her all the time. Like it wasn't.
Yeah. Des, I like that she's a piano fan. Yes, and the whole little backstory of, oh, I really liked the piano, but then this guy just kept playing it forever and ever and ever, and I had to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So the character's name is Hal, Hal, Andrew, but I can see the play on words there with Hal.
I
Yeah.
can't think of any how.
Um, one thing that jumped out at me going back is like I'm usually such a like character reader and like really get attached to people. Like the characters, like such a small cast. There's no one I was like deeply invested in or felt any like
Mm,
seeing myself in them. But it's still like such a good book without that being like one of the driving factors for me, which like and I can't say why, like I guess all of the other pieces, but like that's usually such an important piece for me. And like yeah.
I mean, I definitely connected with Margaret, the main character. Like you wanted good things for her.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
not like
But
a
yeah,
see myself in her kind of way, which is usually like yeah. Or just yeah, she's someone, or even she's someone I would see myself spending a lot of time with. I just love being around her or anything like that. She's interesting, but like
yeah.
a little more of like a character you study rather than a character you vibe with, which is not normally how I
Hmm.
lean. I'm very curious what Andrew is picking up about the story from just like I'm
Our
so
challenge,
impressed you're just hanging out. Yeah.
Yeah. Nicole said, and when she refused to leave the house, that echoes what we see in abusive relationships, and often asking, why don't you just leave when it comes to abuse?
Yeah, some
That
of
was
our
a
feelings
fun.
towards the house were like hard to, because like all of that is definitely true, but I also so admired her, like, this is my thing that I want. And
Yeah.
like she does eventually get to like banishing the bad stuff and keeping the part that she wants, but it doesn't fit as well nicely with the like just mirroring abuse kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I kind of liked, because there's a part later on where Catherine gets like mad at her.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, after everything he put you through, he's the one who left you. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that is something that a lot of children with parents who were in abusive relationships, I know that's something that a lot of those kids feel like, after everything you didn't, or he did. Although of course for Margaret it's a different story, but
yeah, I think it definitely makes you empathize and sympathize with people who are in abusive relationships as to why they stay and are, you know, trying to make the best of a horrible situation. But I think having the house and her defeating it that way, I don't know, it was interesting to be like, you have to like embrace the horror almost, in order to defeat the horror. I don't know. I had a point there, but it was gone. So
another thing I noticed was that almost every chapter started and ended in a very like voicey or engaging way. I kind of stopped noticing and just kind of fell into the prose after about the halfway mark, but I was keeping track. It was like, oh wow, that one started like it could have been a first chapter of the book. That one started like it could have been the first chapter of the book.
Interesting.
Like, yeah, they just all started like they were telling their own story, and then they would end with either like an escalation of something, like she looks over and Angelica has showed up and she's pointing down at the basement, right on schedule, but now my daughter's here. Or
yeah,
there's the chapter where they find all of the Jack Daniels bottles in Hal's office, and it's like so deeply sad because she's like really thrown off by it. And then it ends with Catherine finding a box of something, and she's like, well, we have all these bottles in every drawer, what's in that box? And she dumps it out, and it's just a bunch of AA chips, in like a rainbow of them, like such evocative visual or evocative like imagery tied with like a moment of levity, so it's not so like, oh well, now I'm just bummed and I want to close the book.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting reading some of the reviews where some people were like, the middle kind of dragged a bit. And this time around, I read it almost in one sitting. I think it was like a few days spread out. But I don't know, pacing felt pretty tight to me. I don't know if either of you experienced any critiques with the pacing.
I can see how, if you don't read a ton of horror, or if you tend to read more like slasher types of horror, it could maybe feel like the pacing dragged. For me, I just kept noticing how well paced every reveal was, like how perfectly gradually she showed the flaws in the logic that are the hook of the book, that like make it charming at first, and then how gradually she sprinkled in all the things Hal was doing to her. And
yeah, the balance of like flashbacks, Catherine looking for her dad, and Margaret just trying to hide everything from Catherine, and like that being the one that felt the most like pressing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like pacing never felt like an issue. And so Andrew says, this definitely sounds like a very cool book, but it sounds well written enough that it definitely would have haunted me. And like, it is scarier than I remembered.
It's, yeah, quite gruesome.
And like, not like the gruesome stuff, but like the way she describes Master Vale, and like, he was like, I understood. Yeah, like, and then the whole like finale sequence is just like, oh my god.
God.
Yeah. When it first starts having to the first police officer, you're like, oh no, what is going on?
But then there's a part of you that's like, phew, I thought that they were going to make me think that this was all in this woman's
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the like brief, because and you all know that like it's such a thing of like,
I hate
I'll be so disappointed if that's what, and like loving it that much until that point, and be like, oh no, I've been tricked.
Yeah.
Right.
And they like, she really drags it out and like really lets you think like, oh, they're going to put her in a police car. And that's going to be the end of the book. Which, like, how many times have you seen that happen? So many times in horror stories.
Well, even like the questions that the therapist gives for the daughter, Catherine, to ask her, I was like, these sound very like realistic of what you would ask someone to try and ascertain their mental state.
And like how badly she did at them. Of like, oh, we lost time. I didn't realize we lost time. I've been here the whole time.
I know. I was like, I think the time is fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like the constant layering in of cool visuals in the finale. Just we've got the crazy spider crunching thing happening with the cops, but also blood is pouring down the stairs, and also there's flies everywhere, and also then the birds are flying into the house, and there's a cop on the ceiling with just flies coming out of her mouth. Like, it just, every time she turned a corner, she gave a really vivid setting.
Yeah.
Now that we're saying all this, I'm like, I probably shouldn't have monetized this video.
I had remembered a lot of the book, but like I think some of like the gory bits I had forgotten. And so reading it again when her daughter's like, "Mom, have you been eating flies?" I was just like the
Yes, because like of course that's what Catherine thinks. Like, what else would she think? Yeah. Des said my jaw was on the floor for like 30 minutes straight. Even the second time reading it, I was just like, holy shit. Like, it just keeps escalating.
Yeah. And to go from the like those moments of like, is she just gonna get in the cop car, to then dial it up so much more intense than it had been for the rest of the book was just, and like going back to just like, as you're thinking, is she just crazy, and the cops questioning her. And this time I found it interesting of like the shift in tone once they made the connection of the priest, who everyone had also assumed was crazy, and like, because like they were like all very just like, and then it was more of like a pity thing after that.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah. I think as a villain, Master Vale is really interesting because he obviously, from the history that we learned, was also a victim of cycles of abuse, but then he's just horrific and creepy. And she doesn't try to explain to us why. Like, there's not a reason, and there doesn't need to be he's just a really creepy dude. Who's now a really creepy supernatural entity. And I think my personal opinion, your mileage may vary, is that too many horror stories try to give you an exact reason for why things are as bad as they are. That this is just like, there are these terrible cycles, and this guy was just really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, Des said who else would have left Hal in the basement in the previous September? Because the Master Vale's like attacking him, and she stops and goes back for him. And the whole time I was like, you should just left him.
Right.
Yeah. Like for me, like you saying like Master Vale is the villain. Like for me, like Hal was the only one I really thought of that way of like
Yeah.
Master Vale just kind of was, and he was like the thing poking at Hal and just
He's an
like
antagonist.
yeah.
Yeah, Hal is the one who elicits a lot of like, oh, I don't like that guy for me.
Yeah.
Master Vale, it's like, he's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, like because he was set up as just like this lurking thing to be afraid of that was unclear for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And just like he's like the and eventually he's like very scary, but for so much of the book he's just like the ominous, he's in the basement of
Mm-hmm.
He's the thing that's trying to get out by the end of September.
Yeah.
I think we had a question from Nicole earlier. Nicole said, I believe it took me until after her daughter arrived to realize that the haunting was what the haunting was a metaphor for. When did the rest of you pick up on the metaphor? But at the end, when we see the ghosts are real.
I think definitely the hint of it was when she didn't want her daughter to visit. For me, because that there wasn't anything particular that had been described in the relationship where I was like, this makes sense of why she wouldn't want her daughter to visit. Other than like what was going on with Hal.
I think my instant suspicion was that something had happened involving him.
mm-hmm.
I think the first read through, it took me quite a while to realize, maybe not until after Catherine had started like going to the police and stuff, that I was like, oh, like he's in that house, and there's a very good reason why he's in that house.
I never had like big aha moments. It's always just like somewhere along the line I pick up on it, and it's just, but I'm especially books that I'm really enjoying. Like
Yeah. Check my notes again.
And Grisel said when Hal called their daughter a slur, I was done with him. Like I feel like I was just done with him the whole time. I never wanted him back in that house. I was not that worried about where he was.
I was like, other than like the trouble it could cause her, I don't care.
Like, yeah, Margaret doesn't seem that worried about where he's gone, so.
And I think Carissa Orlando drops within the first third of the book. She very casually mentions that Catherine went and lived with her sister for a little bit.
Yeah.
And she brushes past it like it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like anyone paying attention is like, oh, why'd she have to go there?
Yeah. Yes, as I was also excited when Margaret tackled him. I was like, yeah, girl.
Yeah. And that being foreshadowing for the ending. Again, like every flashback that we saw had something that paid off in the present day.
Yeah.
You guys did a really good job of actually like dissecting this. like the parts that make it like what you would want to be able to put into your own writing. Like
I like have just begun writing my own cool house. And so I actually found this like very inspiring.
Oh, good.
Just trying to be like, I love this so much. How did she nail this? Not that I want to like copy it, but I want to know like, how did she do it? And what are things that I can like learn from that?
Yeah.
Does anyone have like one, like the major thing that like you can see what hooked you on the premise? Or because like for me, like being a lover of Cool House, but also like how quickly we see one that like how creepy it is, but how like intent she is on continuing to exist like this for me was like the okay, so it's just like deeply haunted and that doesn't even matter. Like that's just we're just rolling with it and like doing our best to survive in order to stay in Cool House. And like and for her, I'm sure it wasn't so much Cool House as just my house.
Yeah. No, I remember an author either on Twitter or on Blue Sky, I can't remember which, had said like, "Oh my gosh, the September House, you need to read it." And I forget like what hook they gave for why. But I think I read it after the two of you had read it, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is hilarious!" And she's like, "Yeah, well, it just happens. The blood coming down the walls in September.
It
Just
is
gotta deal with it."
September. So.
Yeah,
like just that tone of it was really what grabbed me. Of just everything about like the cover and the title. I love a good haunted house, but it wasn't at all what I expected it to be.
Yeah.
And also it was kind of funny. Nicole said, I thought there must be a reason the daughter was willing to look for him. The fact that either of them cared about him enough to wonder where he was is still strange to me. I did think about that as well, of like, Catherine didn't like want to talk to him on the phone or anything, but like at some point, when do you get like, what is my mother keeping from me? Where did he go? Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think for me, the like, oh, I'm hooked. Because I already knew I was going to like it because you had read it and assured me that you were worried it was all going to be in her head. And I was like, well, Kelly wouldn't have told me to read it if it was all in her head. So I went in with a pretty open heart. And then, what is this, like 5% into the book, we meet Elias, the kid. She like turns around and he's there and she goes, and he's a bit of a bother, and just describes the most horrific child you've ever seen in your life. And he tries to bite her and she's like, haha, you got to be faster than that. And I was like, yeah, I got to read this whole book.
Yeah, Nicole said what hooked me is that it happened every September, like without fail. I needed to know why, but like just in September, that for sure as well, of like that being a quirk of it. It was all just so like quirky instead of creepy. It was just like, oh, I don't know what I'm getting into.
Yeah. And the writing was obviously very strong. I felt like it was, for me, the perfect level of like descriptive versus like moving things forward.
It was visual without me wanting to like skim past it. Like it wasn't just too in the weeds in it.
And I think with such a strong theme, it would have been easy for it to start to feel preachy, but it like she didn't do that at all. She would just have moments of like searingly beautiful prose that like got to the theme so perfectly. And then she'd just keep going. Like it wasn't even the end of a chapter or anything. Like I highlighted this one line. Where was it? Let me find it. My Kindle's going so slowly.
I also felt like first person POV was the correct POV for the story.
Definitely. Oh yeah.
Sometimes I'll read too many first person POVs in a row and I'll be like, this had to be in first person. I'm like, no, this one did.
This one needed it, yeah. Yeah, she's just having a random conversation. I believe this is with Edie on her front porch. And Edie's like, why don't you just tell me about it? And she says, I'd grown so accustomed to solo trips through hell over the years, it seemed counterintuitive to invite company. And it's like, that's a huge theme of the book. And then she just keeps going.
Yeah.
Were you surprised about the Edie reveal the first time you read it?
I think the first time I was, because I listened to it so fast, I didn't pick up on anything at all.
I know, because like at the beginning, she's like, oh yeah, we liked it because it wasn't by anybody. But then you completely forget that. And you're like, oh yeah, Edie, the next door neighbor.
That's the neighbor. And the first thing she tells you about her is like, I like her a lot because she's my only living friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always take things so like I don't dig that deep. I never find clues. She tells me it's this way and I believe her. I feel like the next biggest character that deserves more credit than she typically gets is it Frederica?
Yeah.
Like she's just like I don't know, like, how she goes from being so helpful to just like so deeply unhelpful.
So unhelpful.
And like sometimes she can kind of be convinced to help clean up her mess, but sometimes she's just gone. And now, like, the amount of time Margaret will spend just like fixing these very random things and how it all must look to Catherine.
Nicole said, "Remind us what happened with the neighbor." She was the person who bought the house in the 90s, and the house drove her crazy.
And she took sleeping pills.
Yeah. Not like crazy, but it sucked all the joy out of her.
Yeah.
So she was dead all along in the story when Margaret knew her.
Yes. She was the Bruce Willis Sixth Sense character.
Mm-hmm. I felt like Frederica was so deeply sad. Like, there's a part where she asks her at one point, like, "Oh, did you have kids?" And she's like, "Maybe, but I can't remember. It's been way too long."
Yeah.
And that is so messed up, Carissa. Why would you do that?
Yeah. She was just kind of collateral in the upstairs couple story. Like it wasn't even.
Yeah.
I did like the world building for the ghosts that like Frederica was wary about using things that weren't around when she was alive. Like she wants to toast on the fire and stuff like that. I was like, that totally makes sense for ghosts. I buy that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like does she kind of is she there forever after? Like everyone else kind of leaves and she's still like making tea. Like I don't really know what I think happens to her.
I didn't get the sense that everyone was gone forever.
No.
I got the sense that they were just like giving her some time in her house. And like
I feel like Elias and his mom were gone forever. I definitely got like a
I did get a finale for them. But I felt very much like Edie was going to come back.
Okay, then would Hal show up eventually?
No. I have wondered this a lot.
I hope not.
Yeah, I hope not too.
Yeah, I feel like that would almost be like a whole sequel of just like being haunted by that.
Yeah.
Like
that'd be rough.
now that we all know what the theme is, that actually seems like a pretty solid sequel.
Really, terrifying. Because we also, Frederica is just constantly doing things to try to help around the house, and then at the end, she says like, "I think I'd like to go rest for a bit," and I don't think we ever see her ask to do that at any point before that.
No, she's always like, "Can I go do this chore?"
Yeah.
Yeah, Margaret would just like desperately like her to stop being helpful sometimes, but
yeah.
And I liked that, they did this thing and it took away some of the horror of what had like the ghosts weren't living in their deaths anymore, which felt very like when you break a cycle of abuse, it doesn't make the things that happened to the people who came before you any less bad, but it feels like, I did something that has righted a wrong for me and everyone moving forward. And it feels very like, I've made a small piece in this. And I liked how now we see these ghosts, but they don't have the afflictions of their murderers just carried with them. I really liked that at the end.
Des asking about like who's your favorite ghost. Not really answering that, but like thinking about the kids. I had found it kind of strange that there were a couple that Margaret couldn't remember their names because that seemed out of character for her. Of like, you took all this time to like research it and like knowing these things is important to you. like looking at it now, like I guess it works as like a clue of like the lost time and how tired she was, and like because it felt like she would remember their names.
Yeah.
And she like corrects herself. Oh, right, that's so and so at the end of like, oh, I was wrong. His name is that. But
Yeah.
it felt so weird to me in the moment of like, why doesn't she remember these two? Like, what did they do?
Yeah, in my head, that was because they don't show up till the last few days of September when she's already lost a lot.
I would still remember
and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like she has other months to research.
Yeah, so. Yeah, exactly. Like you'd be thinking about them not in September. I would be like prepared for it, and then this guy's coming.
Yeah.
You have like a schedule written out on the calendar.
Yeah. 100%.
This is Elias Day.
Yeah. Yeah. We went way longer than we thought we would, so.
Yeah, look at us go. I think one of the things I'm so impressed with and want to try and take into my own writing in the future is just the fact that, like, it was obviously very well thought out. Like, I can tell they did a lot of, like, they put a lot of thought into the revisions of all of this. She even mentions in the, like, afterword that the book had several different endings while she worked her way to the right one. But also just the fact that she did not pull any punches with anything. Like, she lets you sit in the unknown. She lets you think for a second that maybe he's gonna get Catherine, even though you don't like really like, you kind of know in your heart she's gonna jump in. Yeah. But like, he takes Catherine. There's a high body count in the book, despite having a very low number of characters. She like changes rules. So like the house is creepy just in town when she's outside of the house. Yeah, I think that's the thing I most want to pull is just like, let yourself think outside the box. Let it look like things aren't going to get better. And yeah.
Knowing that she like worked a few different endings makes it that much more like almost funny that she went, nope, this is the one. This is it. And like, it's great. Like, it totally is. It's just like, it's so unhinged of like, were the other versions also that? Or like everyone, she was like, nope, this is not enough.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. I'm going to add that book to my list. I was just thinking after reading this, like, I got to read some more horror. I haven't been reading enough this year.
I read Bury Your Gaze this week, and it was Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. And like, there are things in this chat that like, oh, I wish I could like, I'd have to spoil that one. So like,
yeah. I also saw Rachel posted on her Instagram story the other day this book that she got that was like, how to become the Dark Lord and die trying. And the title is so good. I have to read it now.
Nicole, I've already responded to your message about finishing Dungeon Carl. It made my day. Always happy to chat about the book.
I am going to start reading The Artist's Way. I know I haven't yet, but I will. I was trying to read other books that were due.
Yes. Oh no, I just pulled my bookmark out. I read chapter 2 today, actually. And I liked chapter 2 quite a bit more than chapter 1. I feel like these are the second half of week 2 is stuff that I'm like interested. It was all about like self-doubt and stuff. And not letting like your own pessimism get in the way of things, which I feel like that's what I need to work on. So
yeah, that tracks. I'm glad we did this like dissecting a book. Yeah, like I've wanted to do this for a long time, and I'm sure there's other ones we could dig into.
Yeah, I have another one of these scheduled for later this year. Let me pull it up. Where did I put it? I have one scheduled for August as well. So we can brainstorm what we want to do for that one.
I do like that our first one for dissection was about horror.
At some point, even if it's just Des and I'm desperate to like talk about Dungeon Crawler Carl in this way because it subverts so many things. But it really is like the first book doesn't do it. And like,
So it has to be a series chat.
yeah. And the series,
I got this
series
one.
isn't done or can, I don't know. I don't know how to pull where to like draw that line, but we'll just see. Because there's a lot of like interesting writing things that it never quite goes the way I expect.
Mm.
Yeah.
Des says please and thank you.
Wow. Well, this was super fun. I'd love to do this for more books if everyone else wants to as well. Let us know in the chat if there's anything you think would be a good candidate for this. Next week, we've got a write-in. We've got 2 more chats and then a little summer hiatus. We all tend to travel around the end of May or have a lot of things planned, so we always try to book a summer hiatus around that time. So next week is a write-in, and then the week after that, we're going to do like a craft night, talk about books, media, you know the deal. And then we will take a few weeks off and be back on June 18th with another write-in. We do still have a couple of like topics that don't have anything claimed on them. So if anyone watching has something you want to hear us talk about regarding books, media, writing, definitely let us know. You can let us know in the chat, in the comments, or in the Discord. And we can get that on the calendar for this year, hopefully. Thank you so much, everyone. This was a really good conversation.
It was.
Yeah.
So we will be back next week for a write-in. All right.